The word conflict and the word human came into existence at the same time, when the caveman became conscious about himself and everyone around him, and he considered himself to be different from everyone else and better than others. That was the first conflict. Every single conflict we see around us all over the world is a creation of a human being, including most of the problems with the nature. We humans are at conflict with everyone and everything around us, and with ourselves as well. There is not even a single country in the world, a single city in any country, a single household in any city, a single family or any individual who does not have any conflict. The conflict could be with the other nations, with other cities, with other family members, and if there is nothing, there is always a conflict going on between the good and the bad, virtues and the sin, right or wrong, and so on. The root cause for every conflict is the same, as it has been from day one: the unfair distribution of the resources. These conflicts are not a new thing, as it has been the case as far as we can track in history of mankind. It all started with the distribution of the surplus food that we failed to figure out how to distribute among us fairly. And we are still struggling to do so. And this day and age, it is not just the food, it is everything we humans can claim to be ours. There are people who are struggling for the next meal for themselves and their families. And there are people who throw away food every day that can feed people in need for weeks. Some poor countries struggling to feed their populations have their international debt less than the worth of a company bought by Elon Musk that will be used only for messaging, with no further benefit to humanity. There are people in sub-Saharan countries who don't have access to drinking water, and we, the people of the developed countries, take the uninterrupted supply of water and electricity for granted, consider it a right, and despite having every knowledge about the natural resources, keep wasting it blindly. Any country in charge of some kind of natural resource wants to cash in every single drop of oil, every lump of coal, every log of wood, every grain of sand that has some value, and that too attached to all these by other humans. We are in a race to create the biggest numbers possible on the digital screens of the banks and the stock markets that somehow proves the worth of an individual, a company, or a country. And on the other hand, someone in so-called third world, so many children sleep hungry at night in the hope that they might be able to eat the next day. There are individuals in developed countries who believe that they are immune to any kind of disease or problems of the developing countries, who protested against the safety measures being taken during COVID, creating typical first world issues, like it is an attack on their freedom. And there is a country on our planet, North Korea, where no one has ever heard this word, and where every human being is born with only one future, and that is to serve the ruler when he wants, what he wants, and how he wants. The conflict in the Middle East between two communities, two religions, and two cultures has been going on for decades, both claiming the same land as their own. And one of them suffered the worst acts of brutality during Holocaust. Although the people who were victims or witnessed this event might be sympathetic to Palestinians, but the officials in charge think otherwise. and are committing and supporting the similar acts of barbarism. Those were done against their own people. And this time, the oppressed is an oppressor, ignoring the basic rule of humanity, to not deny the right to live to fellow humans. Innocent lives are always lost, and the politics always wins. That always works in the favor of the mighty and the wealthy. And the same politics the rest of the world uses to decide on when it is worth it to interfere. And it just keeps on watching humanity destroy itself over and over. As the United Nations and the wealthy countries are waiting to interfere in the issues of Russia and Ukraine, the issues of China with Taiwan and Hong Kong, the issue of evolving dictatorship in India, the financial crisis of the South Asian countries, and so on. Generations and generations are ignored and left alone to suffer until they forget their rights, forget their culture, their language, their issues, and until they forget being human. No one in the native populations of the First World, the US, the Canada, Australia, and the countries with the colonial history can relate to any of us, the free citizens of the modern world. The thriving civilizations of the Middle Ages were destroyed mercilessly by the so-called pioneers and forefathers of the civilized countries in the name of colonialism, when some humans considered themselves to be superior to any other race based on their skin color, and ruled over them by force, by killing them, enslaving them, depriving them from the basic necessities of life, abducting their next generation so no one can ever rise up to ask them any questions. And the same elite from those empires are still conducting business. The business of exploitation, extortion, abuse of power, and everything possible that cannot be proved in the evidence-based code of law. And they are still stealing all the wealth from the common people around the world, and still channeling this wealth back into their own privileged countries. And the common people of those very countries are in the same boat as everyone else around the world, struggling to make ends meet, earning day and night to pay the bills and taxes. And the same taxes those imperials never have to pay. And when the citizens of these developed countries are protesting on the streets for fair wages, better healthcare, accessible and affordable food, shelter and education, the rich are sitting in their penthouses of their billion-dollar hotels in places like the Cayman Islands, discussing climate change that they are capable of dealing with, but will never do, knowing that the wealth in their bank accounts cannot filter out the polluted air for them to breathe for a long time, knowing that it is not a hoax, and there is enough scientific data proving that the glaciers are almost gone. The level of water of the oceans is rising. The rain belts are shifting. Weather patterns are changing where we can't tell the springs and summer apart, and autumns and winters apart. And we are heading into the age where uncertain, abnormal, and severe events like storms are a norm. And apparently the causes of all this, like carbon emissions, depleting ozone layer, wildfires, exploitation of natural resources, deforestation, drinking water going scarce, polluted oceans, species going extinct are not on the agenda of those penthouse parties. They have their bets on the space tourism in the hope of escaping and abandoning Earth after capitalizing on every available resource here. And isn't it the same that this class has been doing over the ages, since they found out the flaws of the human nature? that it is possible to manipulate and play with the human minds, rule over them and their territories by creating a conflict among them and walk away with the desired wealth when they are busy fighting among themselves. And some of our own, knowingly or unknowingly, keep making it easy for them for their own selfish or superficial reasons. We all are ignoring the patterns of the civilizations flourishing and diminishing. One of the flaws of being human that we never learn from history. Every civilization had started and sustained as long as the majority of its people were honest, loyal, and free. And the decline always started with some of them going against their own people. Just look at the world today. We as a species are becoming one civilization, as the physical distances among us are becoming obsolete in the age of information technology. On the intellectual and psychological level, we are drifting apart. And the wealthy and the elite class is busy doing whatever they are best at, being religiously selfish, and just manipulating everything and everyone. In accordance with the patterns and history, we, the human beings, are headed for an extinction. We cannot deny this fact. No matter what the politically and financially controlled media says, the science says that we are headed in the wrong direction. It is not fair to our next generation that the world we are going to leave for them is going to be a chaos. And every single one of us has to play a role in all of this, as every civilization before us has gone the way where most of its citizens were headed. The only thing we humans, the conscious beings, are here for or supposed to do is to find our direction and spend the time we are given in that direction. There are more issues on our planet than human beings, and it is impossible to even know about all of them, let alone the solutions. And the biggest tragedy of humanity is that the people who want to make a change don't have the resources or time. And the people who have the resources and time, they don't want to do anything, as they don't need to. But someone has to take the initiative for ourselves and our next generation. We can start with the one issue right in front of us, right in front of our eyes, and take the first step. And every step in the right direction will slow down the decline, if not stop it. We, the Homo sapiens, the wise and the conscious ones, for once in our lifetime, let's all agree that we are responsible for our own children at least, and to safeguard their future, and for every other piece of business we consider important, to be selfish or generous, to be virtuous or a sinner, to be evil or a saint, whatever we want to be in this lifetime, for the whole performance, all we have got is one chance.